reminder to everyone listening who has a TV, or parents have a TV, or friends have a TV, to turn off true motion, motion smoothing, real motion, whatever the hell it's called. Because I just got a new TV, which is very exciting. But I had to go in through basically all of the picture settings apart from one and switch that off. And I immediately notice it. I'm like, what have you done? And it does this thing where
Explain to people.
I will do. It does this thing where even on if you go onto Netflix, it will go automatically. Your TV might go, of course you're watching Netflix, so we'll get on a special smooth motion video thing for you, sir. And it was like installing all the apps had to be like, no, I don't want this here or there or anywhere. It's really annoying. Motion smoothing or true motion is a thing that for some reason now is on default for most major TVs. And the best way to explain it is that motion in film is a very specific and dialed in feature, like how much motion blur there is and how much space there is technically between each frame is a really important part of seeing a film correctly as it was intended. So as we know, films are shot at 24 frames a second, and therefore the shutter speed is double that at 1/48, or it's called the 180 degree rule, so it's always double the frame rate. Sometimes this changes, like for example, the opening of Saving Private Ryan is shot at a faster shutter. Action scenes in Marvel shot at a faster shutter. That gives it sort of a shaky, chaotic choppiness to it. But that's the director's decision to do that. A lot of TVs always think that the brighter, more contrasted, the smoother the image is, therefore the better. And I think in TV showrooms, that's the case, because you might be comparing it to loads of other panels and you'll see like the honey dipping over like a raspberry and you go, wow, it's so smooth, so fluid. But that's usually like 120 frames per second video that's got extra motion in it.
Particularly when you see old films, like really old films, the black and white movies, it's sort of upscaled and modernizing the smoothness.
It'll look like a sitcom or look like a news reading piece, which is shot at 50 frames a second with extra shutter, and it's just the most irritating thing. And it's not like you'll find it flicking itself back on. And I'm quite good at going through menus and applying to default and going through and just turning it off. And it's really annoying. And I know Tom Cruise did like this is years ago now. I think it was promotion for like Rogue Nation or something. He did a big PSA with, or it might have been Doug Liman with Edge of Tomorrow actually.
Something
he might
like
have done
that,
it with Doug Liman. He did a big PSA about it and he was really annoyed at all the manufacturers for doing it and he encouraged people to switch it off. Because it would really annoy you if you went home to people's expensive TV sets trying to get the home cinema experience. It's got this horrible motion on it.
It's got the thing as well where, because it's like generated, it sometimes clips the background around. Have you seen that in the motion smoothingness makes it like if someone's walking in front of us, particularly if it's got a pattern in the background or like slats of a blind, it'll like carry some of the background with the actor.
Yeah, it's like an aliasing thing. So there's so many settings, and they'll do things like noise reduction, which I'm like a bit on the fence about. So in a lot of ways that cleans up the image, but sometimes like the noise in the image was part of the image itself. And I don't want to change that. There's like AI things where it will decide what needs to be brighter and darker, and it might just brighten up a face a bit more because it's like, well, it's a dark face, and I'm like, yeah, it's a dark face because that's how it was, man.
Because it's Michael Myers, it's Halloween.
For better or worse, it was a little bit darker there and a little bit brighter here, and it really bothers me.
Who made you God?
Yeah.
Who made you decide?
But I christened my TV by just flicking on something sharp and Dolby Vision. And I flicked on the final scene from Dunkirk when Tom Hardy lands the Spitfire on the beach and gets taken by the Germans. And, Harry Styles is like, I can't read it. And then they read out the...
Ringo.
I can't read it.
What does it say? We lost the war.
We're losers, yeah. And then he reads the "We will fight them on the beaches" thing, and it hands him a score mixed with the, I don't know what the name of the music
Elgar.
is. That's it.
I did know it. I forgot what it's. Nimrod.
That's it. Anyway, I thought I've got to play something beautiful to start this off well, and I just flicked through and I was like, boom,
good choice.
Get that on there.
Speaking of a household buying new things, right? Congratulations on your new TV. It does look
it's great fun. Yeah, the PS5's purring on it.
So Anna and I went to John Lewis to buy a bed the other day because we are in our 30s. Well, I'm 30, Anna's 29. But
that's anyway, like a whole sitcom episode of your life.
Totally right. And look, I cannot it's so funny going to a department store.
Did you get in any?
I'm telling you, I'll get there. It's a very interesting experience going to a department store to buy a bed in person. First of all, bumped into friends of the show, Hannah and Benedict Townsend.
Oh yeah, did you actually see
who
them?
had been sofa shopping all day, and there's a very particular type of fatigue that someone wears on their face when they've been sofa shopping all day. I could see it in their eyes. I was like, wow, you've had a day.
This is why IKEA geniusly sells you meatballs at the end of the experience. They've nailed it.
But there is something strange. Something happens to adults in the bed buying section of John Lewis or any department store. You have 40 adults in a room full of beds and mattresses, and people just behave very strangely because suddenly you'll be like, well, I guess I'll just lie down. And I guess I'll just
waiting till they're done before you lie down.
And it sort of looks like they're doing like Woody in Toy Story, like when an adult like walks into the room. And Anna and I were looking at this bed, just sort of like, okay, let's get the measurements.
What if I went diagonal?
And we're looking at this mattress, and whilst we're looking at it, this middle-aged man just on his own just comes and just lies on the middle of the bed right in front of us like he's a patient and we're the doctors. And he literally goes, oh yeah. Oh no, that's very good. Yep.
On my side,
right. Yeah,
and then the other side.
Give yourself a whole narrative, and you're looking around, and it's this weird sort of zone where they're not adults anymore, they're not children.
Yeah.
Behavior, all social norms are out because you're doing
get
something
out of there.
inherently silly,
Yeah.
which is getting in and out of a bed.
Yeah, this big purchase, like you can't mess it up. But how much do you really know until you spend a night in it?
You
A lot
start
of
to
mattresses
realize like
do that 100-day guarantee, but I always
Yeah.
think like who's going through the effort of returning a mattress?
Well, also, I think that a true mattress probably doesn't reveal itself to be what it really is until into the deep days when you've created a groove in
like
it.
a mysterious villain.
We were like, what is comfort anymore?
Yeah.
Like, this is soft, but in
Do
a
I
different
like soft
way.
or firm? I don't know. Who am I?
We got one though, so we're happy with
congrats.
that.
Yeah.
A combination of good sales and us seeing an ottoman, an ottoman bed where you lift it up underneath.
Yeah,
got one of
nice.
those.
Got storage. Hey, yeah,
It's important.
Gotta have it.
You know, that's when you notice like the real flex is when you have these like rich people beds which are on like wooden legs and they look fantastic, but there's no capacity for storage
They
underneath.
want the air to floweth
Yeah.
through.
No, they've got no room to store things underneath because they don't need it because they've got space elsewhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was Domestic Interiors with James and George. Welcome to
Turn your true motion off.
Turn your true motion off while you lie in
And
your new
even
bed.
while your dad might be like, I can't see the difference. Just be like, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna.
You can, by the way, you can buy beds which have a TV that come up at the end.
Have you seen the rolling?
Hospitally.
I know what you mean. There's so if you've got like 30 grand,
Sure.
you can have it so it doesn't even store in the bed. It's in a cabinet that's like, I don't know, a sort of 2x4 type thing. And the OLED rolls up like a blind into that. So without the TV, because the thing about TVs, they get so big, but it becomes this big black box in your room, which sucks light and it's kind of like tacky. But this basically rolls away into a cabinet. And then when it comes in, it goes zoom. Oh, wow. They're really cool and they're very high end. And then they often have wireless. The TV is wireless, so you have no wires running into it. It connects via Bluetooth to a box that sits in a cupboard with all of your consoles and TV boxes. So the actual stand itself has no cables.
How's it powered?
Oh, it'll have a power
Oh,
cable. It'll have a power cable, but apart from there'll be no like complex wiring.
HDMI here, thingy there. Yeah, got it.
It connects via a very high speed thing to a box, and the box has that.
It is funny that the front of a TV can look so ordered, then you look behind it, and it's like,
Yeah, chaos.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Welcome to episode 155 of Pulp Kitchen. Last week we reviewed Paddington in Peru.
It's 156.
Is it 156?
Yeah.
Let me do that again. Welcome to episode 156 of Pulp Kitchen. Last week we reviewed Paddington in Peru and small things like these. Welcome to this week where we'll be talking about Woman of the Hour, which has been on Netflix and has been quite a big hit on there. Woman of the Hour, Anna Kendrick's directorial debut. We'll be talking about also a fun film that's been recommended by Sirens to us called It's What's Inside. Also be reviewing Saoirse Ronan, Oscar-tipped performance in The Outrun. But most importantly, we will be featuring our review of Gladiator II. We will be recording this in a slightly different setup. We are recording this way out of sync. James and I are going away over the next few weeks, so it's a bit out of order. So the Gladiator 2 review will be conducted by James and I over... well, it's not over Zoom, is it? It's just over
the webs.
Over the webs in distance, pandemic style. But the audio quality will hopefully be very good, and you shouldn't notice a difference. But if you are watching it, and
The
we
video
suddenly
will look different.
cut to James and I leaning over our microphones on our laptops, that's why. But we wanted to make sure we gave you the review. So it's going to be a good week.
I'm flying to Egypt.
Yes.
And I'm only going for 4 days. Yeah. And I'm basically I need swimming trunks and a thing.
Yeah.
And EasyJet would charge me literally £80 for a bag each way. So I'm not doing it. I'm just going to do a backpack.
Nice.
But do you understand? I'm bringing this mic. Do you understand the real estate in my bag that this takes?
Yes.
I might just hold it at the airport while I fly.
You put it in your shoe.
Yes, just
wear it around your neck like a necklace.
when I get scanned, they just see a microphone. Is that a condenser mic?
He's wearing a wire.
Yeah.
Because you're flying to Egypt, I imagine that you'll be flying like Indiana Jones. It'll be over a map.
There'll be
with
a
red line.
Everywhere I walk, there's just a red line behind me. Good to see where James has been.
So 4 reviews technically for you guys. So a mixture of recent films and obviously brand spanking new with Gladiator 2. Then we'll of course have emails and
By the time you're listening to this, we would have already gone to the Gladiator 2 premiere. At the time of recording, we're going tomorrow night, but we would have already been. Check out Pulp Kitchen podcast and socials.
It's a pleasure.
Vibes,
it's a privilege.
Really cool. Oh god, when you jumped on stage and got with Paul Mescal, that was ballsy, man.
When Ridley Scott said, I couldn't make this fucking movie without my favourite film podcast. So that's my best South Shield.
Pulp Kitchen, come on
Kitchen,
stage.
come on
Spotlights,
stage.
me and you. I'm just holding popcorn. Like, what?
You would be on. It's not that bad. It's not as good as Griselda, but it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. They know about the in-joke that the food will never be as good as Griselda.
Yeah, we talked about it last week.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Anyway, welcome aboard. Let's get on with the show.
Let's do it. Do you think you can tell?
True motion.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I can't. It's like
it's not subtle.
No.
It's like
there's a whole sub menu of true motion settings. It's like, do you want smooth, cinematic, assisted?
Show.
I don't want any of it. Get out of here. It's just like you can have it, but leave it off by default. I'm sorry. Your review. Over to you. Your podcast.
Let's begin with Woman of the Hour, which is a movie that came out on Netflix a couple of weeks ago and has been very popular. A lot of people talked about it. We did a film bites that we haven't put out yet with Fred Asquith, who said it was one of his favorite films of the year. Woman of the Hour is a directorial debut from Anna Kendrick and starring Anna Kendrick, a true crime story about notorious serial killer Rodney Alcala in the 1970s. Rodney Alcala is estimated by authorities to have killed up to 130 people. He was only officially recorded as killing about 8 people, but authorities estimate it could be as high as 130. Set in 1978, Anna Kendrick plays Cheryl, an actress who is struggling to make work in 1970s Hollywood. You have sort of very casual sexism of the 70s all around her, people not listening to her in auditions, and the only job she's able to get from her agent is a job on what is essentially blind date. Same format, same everything, but it's called or I can't remember the name of the show, but on the show, when they introduce the woman, they say, and our woman of the hour is so-and-so. So she accepts to go onto the show and do this. And in doing the show, she's surrounded again by the casual sexism of the TV presenter and the makeup women who sort of confide in her and talk to her, and they sort of create a sort of unit of women looking at and gazing at the sexism of the 70s. Her 3 contestants, of course, behind the panel, as it is like Blind Date, line up and introduce themselves. And one of them is Rodney Alcala, who we know from the opening of the film is a serial killer. We see him commit one of his crimes at the very beginning, and he is a prolific murderer and killer of women. In the audience as well of the TV recording, of the live recording, a woman is there with her boyfriend, and she sees Rodney Alcala, and she recognizes him from a crime that happened to her friend the previous year. The film then kind of cuts between parallels between the actual recording of the show. This actually happened, by the way. He was on the show. That's the whole premise of the movie. And also contextualizing it with his victims. So we kind of cut back every so often to earlier dates in the 1970s, to his previous victims, and to how he was able to kind of elude the law and the authorities for so long. It's 90 minutes long, and it's really tight. And I think actually it's a really competent, quite curious true crime story. And I think what makes it work is that Anna Kendrick does really good work in contextualizing it in the sexism of the 70s. Every male character brings a different level of misogyny and sexism that illuminates that era in a really interesting way. For example, the boyfriend of the woman in the audience who recognizes Rodney Alcala, he is kind of... he slips into being subconsciously sexism straight away. When she starts to talk to him about it, he says, "Yeah, but this is a TV show. He would have been vetted. I don't think you've got the right. I don't think you've got the right person." Then there's obviously the more aggressive sexism. There's the sort of lingering neighbor played by Pete Holmes, and that's really interesting. I think that's what works really well.
Pete Holmes, the comedian.
Pete Holmes, the comedian.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
He's really funny.
He is really funny, yeah. Rodney Alcala, the guy who plays Rodney Alcala as well as an actor I'm not familiar with, but he looks a spitting image of a very young Vincent D'Onofrio, and he brings the same energy. I think 90 minutes long is kind of the perfect length for it. I'm glad it's not too much longer than that. It feels complete. It perhaps by its topic, and maybe because the fact it's on Netflix, it did feel like a little bit of a TV movie. I didn't think it had much more to tell me beyond the 90 minutes. And when I told Anna about the movie afterwards, I was basically able to sum it up within 5 minutes. I was like, and then this happened, and then this happened. But there are moments that are very tense, that are very uncomfortable. And I would say that the depictions of Rodney Alcala's crimes and the violence against women is done respectfully and done in a way that makes you fear him and makes you uncomfortable, but not in a way that I think fetishizes or aestheticizes the violence against the women. So it's a very curious tale, not necessarily groundbreaking, but very competent from Anna Kendrick, different from Anna Kendrick as well. I'm glad it's kind of outside of her brand, not what we're used to her producing. But yeah, uncomfortable, interesting tale, curious 90-minute movie on Netflix.
I like to hear that it's not fetishizing or aestheticizing that dynamic or that thing. Because I'm not saying this film did that, but do you remember Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile had a really strange tone where I think watching it, did you watch it?
I never saw it.
I saw it and I was like, it was really hard to figure out while you were watching it, hang on, what are we trying to say here? Because it was actually very interesting to not show the murders and to cast Zac Efron, who's very good but very charming, and you were waiting, I think, for something to happen to explain the way in which you were doing the movie for most of it, and that never really came, and therefore it was very confusing and weird for audiences to see, and therefore ask the question, what were you trying to say about notorious killer, known killer Ted Bundy? But I'm glad to hear that, given, again, sort of the Netflix label to it, sometimes these elevator pitch films can reduce these types of stories to something that's a little bit more sensationalist. I'm glad to hear that's not the case.
No, absolutely not. And I believe that Anna Kendrick has actually donated her fee from the film to victims' charities and
that's really nice.
Women of domestic abuse, because she felt uncomfortable. She asked the subject, do I feel uncomfortable making a profit on this kind of subject matter? So interesting. Look forward to seeing what she does next. If you've seen Woman of the Hour on Netflix, let us know. To hello@popkitchenpodcast.com.
She's really screwed it for all the other actresses who go on to play roles. Like, oh, did you hear what Anna Kendrick did? Yeah, she donated all of her acting fee to them. No, it's fine. You just you keep your big acting salary. You keep it. See how you feel when it comes into your bank account, how you sleep at night. Lovely.
I also want to talk about It's What's Inside, which has also been kind of like a hit movie on Netflix, always bouncing around the top 10 for the past few weeks. And I wanted to review it because a couple of people emailed in about it. I mean, if you hadn't have emailed in, I wouldn't have watched it. So Charmaine wrote in and said, "Hi, George and James and George. First time writing in. I've been enjoying all the latest episodes and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I just wanted to let you know if you guys have watched a movie called It's What's Inside on Netflix. I think it's an excellent movie with so much style and reminds me of Black Mirror. I love some of the plot elements and the stylistic choices. I think it's the best Netflix movie that they've released this year. I look forward to hearing your review on the movie." And also Charlie wrote in and said, "This is my third email entering my friend of the podcast territory, maybe." Of course, Charlie.
Friend of the podcast.
I haven't got a question, but just a recommendation. There was a really great overlooked Netflix thriller recently with a sci-fi twist called It's What's Inside. It's absolutely brilliant, wonderfully original, and with some great twists. It also understands and utilizes social media very effectively. So I just wanted to flag this up, as I know that with the myriad of streaming films, some slip under the radar. Loving the podcast. Keep up the good work. So It's What's Inside. Let's talk about that then. So because of those emails, I went and watched the movie. It's What's Inside, which can be almost, if you were to talk about it glibly, is, I would say, Talk to Me meets Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. It's this real... I was really, really glad I sat and watched this. So it's this kind of fun, campy, psychological thriller about a party of 8 friends who reunite in their late 20s the night before one of theirs wedding. And they reunite in this guy's house, which is this mansion that was formerly owned by his mother. And his mother was this sort of avant-garde artist, not unlike the mother in Beetlejuice. So this mansion is full of lots of very strange sculptures, tasteless art, and strange color hues and color lighting and mirror rooms and things like that. It's very ersatz. They reunite and they have a good time. And amongst these group of 8 friends are a couple. The lead actor, I haven't got her name to hand, but she was the best friend in the first season of The White Lotus. She plays Sydney Sweeney's best friend. You know, she took on holiday. Are you going to look it up? Good.
Either Nina Bloomgarden or Raina Hardsey.
Well, it is Raina Hardsey.
Raina Hardsey. Hardesty.
No, it's not Raina Hardesty, but we've pulled up the cast list on Google, but they haven't pulled it up in order.
Madison Davenport.
It's none of those people.
Haley Kiana Lautenbach.
We're going to IMDb.
Alicia Debenham.
It's Brittany O'Grady. Brittany O'Grady.
No, Google just lies, man. Not even there for Google.
Google just makes it up. Anyway, Brittany O'Grady. They play a couple and are, of course, having relationship difficulties. She feels very overlooked by him and very underseen. He's being a little bit of an annoying little prat, to be honest. They reunite at this mansion and it's full of drink and booze and great to see you, but you are aware already within the social dynamics of the group that certain people fancy other people and certain people have feelings and things from the past amongst this group. And there's wealth and you have potheads and stoners and people who are really into yoga and you have sort of meatheads and all interesting, clearly defined character dynamics within the group. Amongst these friends, though, comes a late addition, comes Forbes, a guy who was expelled from college 10 years ago at a party that all of them have different memories of. And there's this really great sequence where they recall the party that happened, and it's done with black and white photography. And every time someone else remembers a detail of the party, the photo changes a little bit, like almost stop motion, and it keeps going. I think it's really fun and playful. Forbes turns up and he says, "Hey guys, I haven't seen you in ages, but I want to play a game. I've got a fun thing to do. I've got this briefcase." And they'll say, "What's in it?" He opens this briefcase up, and it's this very sort of shonky 1970s looking kit. And they're like, "Because you went off to work in California in tech." He's like, "Absolutely right. Let's play this game. Everyone strap yourself in." They get these little nodes, they put it on their temple, and they all sit around, and then you get this wonderful split screen into 9 different screens. Like imagine like a Zoom call, right? But obviously much higher production. And he flicks the switch, and everyone has switched bodies. They have switched bodies around the circle, so everyone is giving this wonderful reaction of what has just happened. And he has this device which enables you to transfer bodies. They have fun. They think that's really crazy. What is that? And he says, "Well, let's play a game with it. Let's play essentially something like Mafia, where I will switch you all. I will know who it is, but I won't play. But everyone has to guess who is in whose bodies, right?"
That's fun.
And it's kind of like, let's play this fun game. And so you get this game that they play. And of course, that is when the movie comes alive. A really interesting concept, body swapping. But what happens when you body swap with a bunch of people who are young, who are sexy, who fancy other people, who are having difficulties? And what happens when you have someone who says they are someone in someone else's body, but they are not that person in somebody else's body?
A freakier Friday.
It is a freakier Friday. And what happens, of course, when a body is perhaps abused and strange things happen and bad things happen to bodies? What does that mean? What are the consequences of that? So it's a really strange but fun concept at the heart of it. And,
cool.
and I have to say, I thought this was a really, really nice surprise. I think it really, it's so playful and fun. It's so stylish. It has this conceit that we're introduced to early on about this piece of art that if you hold like a red filter over it, it will reveal what the real piece of art is underneath. And so when we're being shown people having body swapped, when the director wants to show us, the audience, who's actually inside, he'll put this glaring like infrared red filter over so you can see who's actually within the body.
Yes, because I guess you choosing whether or not the audience knows that is probably a big decision going
They're playing
into that,
on the dramatic irony.
Because another version to do that film is the audience never know. And
the
you're
audience
also
never know.
guessing, but it's interesting you go for that in a way.
I think it's also like fun because it really uses its actors really well. It's so in these typical kind of thriller films, people can fall into character tropes, but you've enabled your actors the opportunity to play 3 different people, essentially. And that's really fun. You can see people who you thought playing one kind of character really open up. That's really fun. It understands in a kind of sort of it's not a horror film, but like a horror adjacent way that sometimes the best kind of those films understand about the role of like sex amongst young people, and it understands the sort of sexiness of people being able to body swap without consequences. So, this person thinks I'm this person. Well, I can get away with doing something with this person because they think I'm
cheating.
It's not cheating. Exactly right, and that's really fun. I think, the kind of whole energy of it is really exciting. So it's fresh, it's zippy. I love some of the stylistic touches to it. Perhaps over its 1 hour 44 runtime, I maybe would have liked 1 or 2 more shocks and surprises to really get it over the line. But at the end of the day, it feels almost like the kind of perfect Netflix movie. Yeah. It's kind of curl up on the sofa on a Friday night, put this on, interesting enough. Can't wait to see what the director does next because
high concept,
yeah. Play it through. I think it uses the concept enough. Who knows if they could adapt it more into a future film. Really kind of glad I watched it, and I've been thinking about it afterwards. I was thinking, how would that work if my group of friends did that?
Yeah.
Like, that's so interesting.
It's almost like White Lotus. You could reboot that with a bunch of different characters, and as long as the characters keep changing and the dynamics are interesting, you explore different things.
Yeah.
It's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
I'm up for that. I might save it for a plane.
Yeah.
Would I be offensive? Would it be offensive to watch that on a plane?
Plane's perfectly fine. It is that kind of movie. Like, it's not, groundbreaking, but it's fun and interesting enough to warrant your attention for a little while. So it's What's Inside. And thank you to our sirens who wrote in and suggested that for us.
Guys, if you've seen It's What's Inside, please feel free to send in your thoughts, your questions, your concerns, your reviews to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. We'll read them out on the show.
Another thing you will like in the film is that not only does it actually include actual Instagram and actual TikTok, you and I get annoyed when they do like a fake one. Yeah. But as our sort of email touched upon, it really uses social media obsession and social media's role within a social group really well. So there's lots of close-ups of people commenting and the reaction
and understands
of
what
eyes.
social media is. It's very rare that it's either captured accurately or like written by people who use it.
Yeah.
That's what you never get.
It's really it's sharp in that way.
Nice.
So it's What's Inside.
Thank you very much to James and George back in the studio. For those of you watching, you will notice our backgrounds are a little bit different, but hopefully, fingers crossed, if you're listening, this is all exactly the same as we do Pulp Kitchen remotely. George, last night we had a very fun time at the Gladiator II premiere in what I think is now probably the biggest event marketing splash for a film since we've started doing this. The only one I think rivals it is The Crown Season 5. Would you think that's correct?
Yes, I do. I think this is the biggest one. It was a rooftop soiree overlooking Leicester Square, followed by a very, very extensive red carpet. And they had, as I thought they would do, booked out 2 cinemas and the screens of all the cinemas within that. So the Odeon Leicester Square was completely booked out. Obviously, that's a huge, probably like 750 screen seat cinema. And then the Cineworld has 3 screens there, the 4DX, the IMAX, and the Super Screen. And those are all booked out as well. It was a massive event. And of course, it was a royal premiere. So good King Charles did turn up at the very end.
And we had very good seats, George, like slightly further back, but smack bang in the middle. There's no excuses for angles here, no sort of Dutch angles watching the film. We were very well treated. We had a lovely little moment. Of course, guys, always follow us at Pulp Kitchen Podcast on socials to see the shenanigans we got up to. You had a lovely moment stabbing me to death in slow motion on some sand, which I'm sure they shipped in from Rome itself to be there. We had some lovely cocktails. We witnessed a fight, a staged fight, like 2 guys who clearly just fresh out of drama school in their combat training, fight to the death, and we were given some ceremonial coins to place a wager on who would win, and that was a strange one, if I'm honest, watching those 2 guys beat each other up. One of them, I think, had a capsule of blood which he popped at one point. We're just there like thinking, good God.
The marketing spend and the marketing meetings that would have gone into these events is always interesting. Like the feast table that was at the event, there was a Roman table resplendent with a Roman feast, huge wheels of cheese and blocks of charcuterie, which we were thankfully informed was going to a charity afterwards and not just being thrown in the bin. But it was very Roman in that respect.
It was totally like excessive feast to celebrate the victory of our fallen dead. And I even thought, I don't know why I thought it, I looked at this huge piece of ham and I was like, well, of course this is fake. Went to go pick it up and it was slimy like live produce. So I was like, this is real charcuterie. This is easily £4,000 worth of charcuterie just sitting here. Like that wheel of brie is about £120 worth of cheese.
They also hadn't given us anything to eat it with. So James and I basically grabbed brie out of the... Well, James grabbed the brie. I didn't have brie myself, but just palmed it out. And I could see some people afterwards looking at it going, what animal has come in here and has grabbed some brie? But yes, we saw it in the Cineworld IMAX. So we didn't have the shaky chairs of the 4DX. This is the same screen where we see a lot of multimedia screenings. This is where we saw Dune Part 2, a good solid IMAX screening, I think, which is a good one to go to if you can't go to the BFI one.
So moving on to the film itself, Gladiator II, we got a lovely little intro from Ridley Scott, who read some notes, and then Paul Mescal, who stood there and said, you know what, I think this is Ridley Scott's finest film, and they walked off and they played the film. And I think Ridley Scott, George, I think of all the directors since we've started doing the show, I think he's had the biggest output of any director. He's done The Last Duel, House of Gucci, Gladiator Part 2, and I feel like he's produced some other things, but of course, and Napoleon. He's just completely unstoppable, but he is back with Gladiator 2, a legacy sequel if there ever was one, 24 years after the original. And I've always thought of Gladiator having this really slightly very iconic place on most people's living rooms in their DVD collection. It was a real mainstay of that era, and it was, you know, had a lot of Oscar attention. It was really like the making of Russell Crowe at the time. The way in which they realized the Colosseum was groundbreaking for the time was, you know, very sad to watch and beloved. And I don't think it's a film I've seen since maybe I was in my teens. When was the last time you think you saw Gladiator 1?
Rewatched it Christmas 22, Christmas 21, one of those, and held up. Fairly recent. Solid watch. But I that was maybe the second time I'd seen it. I know, especially guys who have watched it like 8 times. It's like a recurrent perennial thing for men.
Of course it is. And so this sequel picks up 16 years after the fall of Marcus Aurelius, who is the emperor who was slain by Joaquin Phoenix's character in the first one. And we pick up with our character played by Paul Mescal called Mano, but we know from the marketing of this film that he is Lucius. He is the boy of Connie Nielsen's character Lucilla in the first Gladiator, who is now grown up. After the Roman Empire invades his town, his wife girlfriend is killed in battle, and he is completely burdened with rage and beset on avenging her. And in the process of being invaded, he winds up with Denzel Washington's Macronus, who in a similar role to the what's the actor's name from the first one? Who was in that very similar role, Oliver Reed's role. He's someone who sort of assesses gladiators in the early exterior stages and buys them up if they have potential. He has sort of a political leaning to hopefully sort of navigate his way through to the higher political areas of Rome. And the general in question who killed Lucius's wife is played by Pedro Pascal. He's called Marcus Acacius, who is now with Connie Nielsen's character Lucilla. But Rome is filled with corruption and greed, and it is led by twin emperors, played by Joseph Quinn and Fred Heckinger. And they are bratty and erratic and attention deficit, and they scream and they feast, and they have orgies with food and monkeys hanging off of them. And it's a bit of a disaster in terms of governance. And that's basically the sort of main conceit of the film, and it reveals more onto you as the plot goes on. And I'd say the structure of the first half of this film is incredibly similar territory to the first Gladiator, but that's probably all you need to know for this film. George, how did you get on with Gladiator 2?
Well, there you are. Very well explained. Absolutely. Yeah. 25 years later, we're back. And obviously interspersed with huge action set pieces. If anyone has seen the trailer, we're talking about there's sea battles and Colosseum events. The sad thing is I found Gladiator 2 to be very weak and disappointing. And I'm not even a huge, fanboy of the original or anything like that. But in watching the second one last night, it made me just realize the thing that made Gladiator 1 so great is the story. I think it's almost been misremembered that it wasn't about the Colosseum, or at least it wasn't solely about the Colosseum battles and the spectacle and the chariots and the horses. It was about the story. There is a reason that when you talk about Gladiator to people, the first thing they say is husband to a murdered wife, father to a murdered son, because that connects immediately to the emotional heart of the story. Gladiator is a good story. A high-class general betrayed, of personal betrayal, working his way back up to reclaim his honor. It's a real like universal story. And what was so disappointing with this one is that there are individual ingredients of good ideas within the story. There is, a general arc of revenge from Paul Mescal's character. There is a clandestine operation in Rome to try and restore democracy. There are these mad leaders who are losing their grip on power because they are so bloodlust and so maniacal. Those are interesting ideas, but I was just unbelievably surprised at how prosaic and dull and uninterestingly those ideas are executed. And I thought, you've had 24 years. Is this really the best you can think of? And there were a couple of times I just thought in the 24 years since the first one came out, things like Game of Thrones and actually specifically even House of the Dragon this year, even closely, has superseded Gladiator. And there was a couple of times I was thinking with the most recent season of House of the Dragon with Tom Glencarney's the King role and the sort of the other King characters as well. I've only seen it 3 months ago, but I've forgotten the characters' names already. But that idea of like how to deal with the public, how much blood to give them, how much hope to give them, and I was thinking that's been executed much better, and it was a shame to see that go to waste. There are introductions of things from the previous film, like Derek Jacobi's character. I thought, why is that here? They had not done anything with it. I think a central problem for me as well is the Lucius character. Okay, I've come away thinking, were we meant to have known that? Is there an earlier iteration of this film in which that was meant to be a surprise? Because I just double checked online. That is public knowledge. That is absolutely public knowledge. You Google Gladiator 2, it says Lucius. His name is Lucius. And on the Wikipedia little plot thing, it says, so that is public knowledge. But the way it is delivered in the film, about halfway through, it's like it's some major twist. And I'm thinking, and it's so underwhelming when it arrives, because we're thinking, we know this. We've been told this in the whole marketing. Is that really a big surprise? Either keep that as a surprise or have it come in at the beginning, because one of the other problems is that the characters are really, really thin. Paul Mescal, great actor, not given a lot to do. His character, we are given one scene of him clutching some seeds before the Romans invade, and he's enslaved to be a gladiator. I mean, for goodness sake, and that's a real difference to the first one. I know it's unfair to compare it to the first one, but because it has such a close parallel in its narrative structure, in the first film you really understood. You had time to understand why the betrayal was so bad and what that meant, and the threat that Commodus posed. In this, it's sort of just like a general, my land was conquered. I hate Rome. Generally. I think the best work is probably being done by Denzel Washington. I think that with just to give it some credit, I think it's better than Napoleon. I think it's better than the House of Gucci. I found Ridley's recent work, him to have a real impatience with him with his story, and I got the sense with this that he's got the sense with this one that he really actually does like this world and is happy to spend time there, is happy to be back there. But still, and there's a moment, I don't know how we can talk about this outside of sort of spoiler terms, quite early on with some CGI animals in an arena, I'd say about 25 minutes in, and that was a real moment of what the fuck is happening. The creature design of it felt like something out of Alien. I just thought, what is happening here? So I would just say to round up before I head back to you, James, I would say underwhelming, dull at times, punctuated by quite interesting action, although often strangely edited. Like there are battle scenes that suddenly draw to a close without any sort of sense of a narrative cohesion. And just kind of thin. It's a 2.5 hour film that I have actually found quite forgettable. Not terrible, but I would probably give it like a 2.5 out of 5.
I totally agree. I'm with you basically on everything you said. And I'm quite surprised it's worse than I thought it was going to be. And even in a 2.5 hour runtime, it was immediately clear to me when that moment happened, when we saw the CGI animals in the first major fight scene, it was this like almost like a shock reaction of going, oh, this is this type of film. I actually am really surprised that decision was made. And fighting, whether it's the rhino, which you've seen in the trailer, or that first fight scene with the CG animals, there was such a notable difference for me when they were fighting CG things versus real life people, and the real life sword against sword worked so much better. But you didn't focus on that, and you instead went to do that as your first bit of violence of the film, which I thought was such a mistake, and it left a really sour taste in my mouth from the film going on. And yeah, there were so many times in this film where the story really let the film down, and I really just wish they had taken a moment to breathe and build some dramatic tension, because you hinted at like there were lots of actually interesting dynamics with characters, like you said, like a secondary plot. There are moments that happens to characters which I didn't expect. There are added elements to some characters which are just underexplored. And I'm like, you've got ingredients there. Please just take some time to explain why this matters to your characters. And I think about the first Gladiator, the whole build up to Maximus being betrayed, being led into the woods to be killed, is a really big moment, and him rising back is what makes the film such an entertaining watch. And then similarly, Commonus in the first one is really nasty and villainous, and he's really unlikable, and he does really horrible things, and he's threatening. I understand how he navigates politics and is immediately threatening to our characters. Whereas these two emperors, although I think they're having a lot of fun being sort of those young, arrogant emperors, they never really posed a threat to me at all. I never felt a sense of danger from them. And I think the film really lacked like a core sense of an antagonist. Denzel, bless him, is one of the great actors who even he can pull some interesting parts out of a really terrible script. But the dialogue immediately screams out to me as being really poor. It's surprisingly much worse than I thought. I agree with you. It's probably a little bit better than House of Gucci and Napoleon, but I don't see. I've seen a lot of people saying this is Ridley Scott's best work since X and Y, and I don't really think it's worth putting it on that in that conversation of best work since. I felt like we got to the last half an hour and it was trying to set up another film, which sort of totally took away from any impact this was going to have. I agree. I think Paul Mescal is a really interesting actor, but it's just not really given anything interesting to do here. Surprisingly dull. And to some of the mistakes, I hope people, when they watch it, believe us when you'll immediately see that thing and just go, oh, what happened here? That feels like CG from 2007, and this film had budget. We had charcuterie, like they had money to spend on CG animals there. So yeah, just very surprising.
Yeah, I agree. I think what it misunderstands is that the first film was actually quite a good, again, a great story. A Gladiator film's only as good as its story, but like a great sort of political drama of the shifting balance of power that then expressed itself very well in great action scene moments. There aren't actually that many arena scenes in the first one. They are sort of carefully plotted throughout the script, whereas it's almost like the inverse with this. It's like we have great arena set pieces. How do we string that together with some sort of underbaked plot? I think also a key example of how the plot's underbaked is about in the first one. Not only do you care about the portrayal of Maximus on a personal level, you also care about Rome. You also care about the people of Rome that they've missed out. They're getting a dictatorship when they were promised with Marcus Aurelius this vision of the future, and you really care. And in this film, people are saying, "Oh, I missed the dream of Rome," and I thought I couldn't give a monkeys, no pun intended, with the animals in this film. But like, I think that's I felt no sense of connection to that. And with the emperors as well, yeah, I agree. Like they're having a good time, and when you say there's no sense of threat, it's because they are, in a way, they are not contextualized at all. What I find strange is that the first one was all about the who inherits the crown or who inherits the role to be emperor. So with these two twins, I'm like, well, who are they? Who are their parents? Why have they come to be twins? It's only 15, 16 years after the first one. So how are we meant to have that? How we arrived at this point? Anyway,
it's also like releasing as a legacy sequel being 24, 25 years later. It's like, as you said before, time has passed and we've had so much great drama. As you said, Game of Thrones obviously screams out for how to do really great dialogue and knotty political dramas. Like I just thought, 6-7 months ago, we watched Dune Part 2 in that same theatre, and that film has basically a Gladiator scene, which even though Dune Part 2 story-wise isn't as knotty or as complex as some of the things we referenced earlier, I think Denis Villeneuve completely outdid Ridley Scott here in terms of spectacle and stakes and threat. And I just think like the things have changed, and because you've taken so long to make the sequel, if it was going to be relevant, you should have released it before 2009. You've revealed that this actually you haven't, but by taking so long, that you haven't got anything new to say, and it is essentially just going into the IP drawer and finding something to remake or sort of make a sequel to. And yeah, it's a bit of a. I'm actually quite surprised because we said quite a lot. We were with some other friends in the premiere, and we were like, "What do you think? Do you think it's gonna be any good?" And I was kind of saying, like, "Look, I'm kind of like cautiously optimistic. I don't think it's gonna have the same impact as Gladiator 1, but I hope I have fun." And I just sort of leaving the cinema, I was like, "Oh, it's not even close to my aspiration of what I thought it could be."
Yeah, I said to James, like, put it this way, we've seen many films in that screening room. And Dune Part 2 was one of them. And that's a 3-hour movie that was completely enraptured by, like, one of the best cinema experiences I've ever had. Last night, seeing that film in that screening room, I realized how uncomfortable those chairs are. And I was shifting and I was fidgeting, and I blame the film for that entirely. Like, it made me realize I was just there like...
They were the same seats.
Same seats, same room, but completely different film. It's a real shame. And I will say that, like, I do believe when I'm watching the scenes and you've got, 100 extras and horses and things running by, I have no doubt that Ridley Scott is a master of his craft at being able to corral and run a set like that. And I believe that if you are someone like Paul Mescal on a set like that, watching the master at work, it must be incredible. And it's probably a reason why we don't get many films like that anymore, because Ridley Scott is drawing on a heritage and a history in film and an experience in film that later subsequent filmmakers don't have. But that said, it is sadly very, very underwhelming, and just it is, isn't it? It's just there. It's just on screen.
And painfully similar to the first one in the first half. The structure of it is like a sort of rushed version of the first Gladiator, but not in a way that's compelling or like it's upping the pace for a modern audience. Like the build up to the first fight scene in Gladiator is brilliant because he's walking underneath as the crowd are drumming and there's blood being poured on them, and they wait in the tunnels and the guy pees himself, and there's this real sense of terror that they're going to die. And same thing happens again when he fights in the Colosseum for the first time, and it reveals the crowd. I'm like, it's been 25 years. Like, show me that moment again. Like, build up to the tension. Like, that's what I was looking forward to with all the new bells and whistles and that sense of scale. And I'm like, you didn't even do that.
Yeah, I think it's disappointing. Sorry, I've just forgotten my point.
Oh, sorry. It's interesting. While you think of your point, I messaged some friends who had seen I'd been there, and they were like, "How was Gladiator 2?" And I said, "Guys, I actually thought it was really poor, terrible dialogue, very messy plot, really disappointing." And they were like, "Oh, I spent £25 on tickets to go see it for this weekend. I'm absolutely gutted." And I was like, "I'm so sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I bet a lot of people are, because it's got such a big marketing splash. People will have booked big IMAX seats to go and see this because they love the original." And I think there's going to be a bit of a awkward reaction when people leave.
I agree. Yeah, a little bit of a backlash, really, a little bit of a empty calories feeling. I've just remembered what I was going to say. It was the going back to what we liked about the first film and what this one lacks, that emotional connection. A great example is the Now We Are Free, the Hans Zimmer, the score, that iconic thing that when you hear it, because they're playing it a lot, obviously, in the build-up to us going into the screening room, it gives you like a shiver down your spine. It gives you goosebumps. It's a really powerful thing. And you can all think of the ending of Gladiator with the son running down the field, and they're in the Elysian fields, and he's running his hand down, like, oh, great. It really gets you. You will not be moved by this at all. There is not a single ounce of emotion in this film. It tries, but it's completely generic.
I also felt like in the last sort of 30, 40 minutes of the film, I wasn't clear in my head what some of our main characters' intentions were. I no longer really understood exactly what they wanted in that moment because the story just hadn't been that clear. And there's like Denzel's character has a sort of, he's got another side to him, which is alluded at. But even still, I'm like, what are we trying to do again? And whose side are you on when there's two armies facing each other? I'm like, I don't actually know where you'd stand right now. I'm just sort of letting things play out until this ends.
And also the Hound from Game of Thrones, just there. Just suddenly turns up and you're like, oh, he gets like 3 lines, and you're like, oh, okay. But Anyway, so there you go,
Well,
guys. That was, Gladiator 2. Those are our thoughts. It's a bit of an initial reaction. We only saw it yesterday, but send us your thoughts to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. We'll definitely be stewing over it over the coming few weeks, and I'm sure lots of people are going to get to see it and have their thoughts over it. I'll be interested to see. I'm sure it'll make a lot of money. I think it will do. But then who knows anymore? We're in a post Joker 2 world. Let us know your
I wonder
thoughts.
if it's going to have a very good opening 5 days where everyone who is sold by the marketing have already booked tickets, and it's going to have this like chock-a-block schedule. But I wonder if it's going to have what they would have hoped, right, is that for the weeks going by, it's still getting tickets of people going to see it. But I think there's going to be a bit of a drop-off if people come out of the cinema and say it's boring and it's not that interesting.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. And also, sorry, I know we've rehashed this, but yeah, I never felt tense in a sense. I never felt like, oh my God, the fate of my characters are really in peril. I thought, oh, it's an interesting set piece that also, by the way, completely over-marketed this film. I know it's one of the biggest films of the year and they're absolutely pushing it, but just to sort of remind myself for the chat, I rewatched the trailer and I was like, Christ, this shows everything, absolutely everything. There's not a set piece that isn't revealed in any of the marketing, I'm afraid.
Yeah, what did you make of the sharks in the water in the Colosseum? As soon as it cut to sharks swimming, I did roll my eyes and shifted my seat and think, you kind of lost a sense of being a bit grounded here. It doesn't look like it makes any sense.
I agree. I mean, historically, you don't give a two, whatever. It's filmmakers, whatever. But you're right. Watching a CGI shark that's the CGI equivalent, sort of like you might find on like Sharknado or something. I'm sorry, I don't want to be harsh, but it doesn't look like a great shark. But yeah, we've come a long way from like the first one where you're really scared for these characters as they get encircled in the Colosseum, and Maximus, because he's a general, says, no, listen to me. Get 4-minute formation, listen to me, and if you don't do that, you'll die. And like Paul Mescal's character does that in this, and we're like, but why? I understand why Maximus does, because he was a general. We see him at the beginning of the film winning a massive battle through his great strategy. But in this, it's just like Paul Mescal's just a bit
He's just some guy.
He's just some guy.
He's just some guy with no context for him, or why he cares to like organize other gladiators. Like you don't really have much of a bond with them. We're kind of sort of going on and on about this, but as you can tell, it's very thin and shallow.
Just to wrap this up, it got me thinking about legacy sequels though, or at least belated sequels. And in terms of belated sequels, if you want to see something that's about, a child being taken away from their family and plotting revenge and going back to, scorn revenge across the sands, absolutely watch Furiosa instead. I think that offers so much more this year. And that film flopped, and that's a real shame. If you compare like the dramatic tension, the stakes that it introduced at the beginning of Furiosa, like I was really there, completely locked in. So different from Gladiator 2. And I was also thinking just about, it's a film that we've got a sequel to 24 years later. And I was like, do you know what? I think I had a better time with Beetlejuice, which is another sequel that came too late. Yeah. It's not a perfect film. I chuckled a few times, and I was trying to work out if I had more fun with Twisters. Now, Twister 1 isn't a great movie, so it's got less of a bar to clear.
I had more fun with Twisters. I'll say that.
I had more fun. They're both mid. Like Twisters, don't get me wrong, it's a very mid film, but like I think I still got more out of that than I did.
You're totally right on Furiosa there as a take. Like that film it really had something to say. It had a world it really wanted to flesh out. It structurally was not the same to Mad Max Fury Road. It was like purposefully structurally so different, and it offered people who love that universe something really interesting, characters that were interesting. It's just what a shame if Gladiator 2 ends up being the success story financially from the releases. But I think unless you have anything else to say there, George, I think we'll probably hand back to past James and George in the studio. I know you already said it, but as always, guys, we would genuinely really like to hear what you think. If you did enjoy the film, maybe you got something out of it that we didn't. Please, as always, send in your thoughts to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. We'll definitely be reading out your guys' responses in the coming weeks, so make sure you send them in. As for now, take care. Back to the studio.
I'm back in the studio with actual James and George.
How you guys doing?
With our remote correspondents. Let's finish our reviews then today with The Outrun, another movie that's come out recently. I finally had the opportunity to catch up with it. A lot of people have written in about it. This is Saoirse Ronan's movie that she produced along with her husband Jack Lowden as part of their production company. The Outrun, which is based on the memoir by, I believe it's Laura Liptrot. Please let me confirm that because I'd hate to get that wrong. Based on the novel by Amy Liptrot.
Almost.
Amy Laura. The Outrun, which is a film that follows Saoirse Ronan as Rona, a woman in her late 20s from the Orkney Islands who is in the deep throes of alcoholism and who returns to her parents' home, her parents' farm on the Orkney Islands to get sober, reconnect with herself and re-find her identity and her sense of place. What I find interesting about The Outrun is that description right there sounds like a very glib movie. That, in other hands, could be a Hallmark Christmas movie, maybe aside from the alcoholism. But it's like, I just need to go away and reconnect with myself. I just need to find my sense of place. What is very interesting about The Outrun is that it absolutely sidesteps any sort of schmaltzy, glib clichédness that narrative would typically have by constructing itself in a very frenzied, messy editing structure that only over the course of its runtime begins to calm and consolidate and streamline itself as Rona herself as a person is changing. So when you begin the film, this isn't a to B to C story arc where we see Rona's how she started drinking and how she got to this point. This is the thing that begins right in the middle with her falling out of a pub at the beginning of the film, having a black eye, scattering herself up to the Orkneys, and yet, this kind of scattershot mentality that flits back and forth. I think, Saoirse Ronan is always one of the favourites. We love her so much, and she's. It's like when I talked about the Cillian Murphy movie last week. It's like we know they can do this, and it's so refreshing to see them back and doing this kind of thing. Nailing an Orkney accent and just delivering a performance that we know she can give, but because we know she can do this, we shouldn't overlook the fact that it's very, very good. Yeah. Completely understands that this character is complex and has difficulty, deserves your sympathy, but then can also be very frustrating. I think what's really interesting as well is that because this whole setting of the Orkneys is handled in a way that feels very tactile and real, and like a bit like the Cillian Murphy movie last week as well. Small things like these. In the Outrun, the Orkneys gets in your bones. The sound of the waves, the swell, the rumble, the wind, the harshness of the environment, and there's lots of conversations about the myths that the Orkneys are sitting on top of a dragon that was slain, hundreds of years ago, and also the remoteness as well. It's like she says at one point, Britain is an island off of Europe. Scotland is a country at the north of Britain. The Orkneys are an island. The Orkneys are an island off the coast of Scotland, and the island that she's on, Pappy, is an island off the coast of the Orkneys. It's this just like like Russian doll thing of getting further and further away. Papa Cedar's also in it, Stephen Delane, Saskia Reeves, and it's a film I haven't had this in a while. It really grew on me. Yeah. And because of its frenziedness at the beginning, I found it sometimes a little hard to connect. But the longer it went on, and the reason I realized it was this whole structural approach to delivering the story, it really grew on me. And it actually builds this really nice crescendo that kind of brings together the environment and the character and her relationship with the Orkneys and her dealing with her alcoholism. And I think it's really interesting. I think it's an interesting piece of work. Not, the definitive movie about alcoholism at all, or necessarily a movie that's going to change the way these films, this kind of stories are portrayed. But great performance, interestingly portrayed. I'm wondering if she'll get tipped for this, Oscar nominated. Maybe not Oscar win, but like Oscar nominated.
That's great to hear. It's one of my ones I've definitely missed over the last couple of weeks or months, and I look forward to getting to it. And I'm glad to hear it's good. I know exactly what you mean in terms of like location and setting, maybe taking you a sec to soak into it, but once you're there, it really washes over you quite nicely.
It's also that it's the way it's cut. Like I get they're doing the frenzied mentality, but sometimes that's a bit hard to then connect because at one point towards the beginning of the film, we're in London, and then it cuts to the Orkneys, and it just says like 157 days. Now, it doesn't say later or earlier. Now, we later know that is later, but it's deliberately being elusive. But because it's capturing her mental state, that was the Outrun. If you have seen it, we've read some emails about it over the previous weeks. Let us know to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com.
George, should we go through some of the emails that we get sent into the show every single week? As always, guys, if you wanted to support us at the VIP tier on Patreon, you can have priority access to have your email read out on the show, or you can just write in your email to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com, just like Yanis did. Yanis writes in and says, "Hi, James and George," and 2 emojis, one with a dark-haired person and one with a blonde child.
I'm just looking at this email here. There's a lot of emojis to sort of substantiate
a lot of
stuff.
emojis written sent from an iPhone, even though it doesn't say. I can imagine. Hi, James and George. First time emailing, and I'm a bit behind on episodes at the time of writing, but gradually catching up. You know when people say that, do you think they've all caught up? People who've said that when they were catching up before.
They're just catching up on, but they finally did it. They finally caught
do you think they've caught up?
I hope so. But take your time.
Love the pod. A friend of mine introduced me to it around episode 80. Hey, if you're that friend,
oh yeah,
you get a point.
Around episode what?
80.
80, oh yeah. Good for you, friend.
It's like halfway from where we are now. Yeah. That's half Pulp Kitchen ago.
Sort of. Yeah. Christ, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah. Well done, friend from episode 80. More like you. You'd all get a point if you did that. And it's quickly become my favorite podcast. It's really helped me taking my mind off test periods, especially when you recommend or talk about a film that eventually becomes one of my favorites. And the emoji is gold film reel. Just like Columbus, briefly once, After Sun, Past Lives, and Perfect Days. Was wondering if you had any recommendations for films similar to these. I guess what links these together is the simplicity and realism of the narratives, looking at surface level though, their beautiful cinematography and their colour palette. Should we answer that first?
Yeah, so that's what these are the kind of films I like, really.
Like softly spoken.
Independent films, small scale, about...
Dialogue light.
Also talking about big things, but in a very light, interpersonal way.
Yeah, Perfect Days is really like a feeling you get from watching that film. It doesn't really try to tell you much apart from present this. But did you watch it in the end?
No, on my list for the end of the year.
It really sort of like presents you with a person's life, and you're left with a feeling, and it's actually quite clearly communicated. But it's so easy on the gas. Perfect Days.
Yeah.
Past Lives is all about the words between what isn't said. After Sun also doesn't really tell you much in dialogue, but it has a lot to say.
I would say before films for this, because that's why I liked Past Lives and Columbus, because it's about...
Steve McQueen's Shane, a lot of unsaid tension.
But these are about... I think these are sort of warmer than that. These are
I agree.
The warm relationships... Two people talking about a bigger thing, but in a smaller way. The thing is, these are all the examples I would give.
Yeah.
I don't have any more.
Good recent films you've got there. Also, side note, in recent years, I've started doing a year of something, and 2024 is my year of Batman, bat emoji. I'm going through films like Batman Begins and Joker. I've quite a few more to see before the end of the year, but it's really interesting to see how different directors and actors build on or subvert the expectations of what these characters are. Since we're nearing the end of the year, what are some of your favourite franchises or themes that you think could work for 2025? Looking forward to future episodes. Yanis.
And then, given Pulp Kitchen in emoji form, so it's a newspaper with a cross because it gets pulped into pulp.
And then a dinner
kitchen.
plate with a lobster.
Yeah, okay.
There you go. What if you were to set the year 2025, the year of 2025 for a franchise, what would you go for, George?
To dig into?
What are some of your favourite franchises or themes that you think could work for 2025? For Yanis.
You could do...
I don't know what you haven't seen, but what would be good to jump into? Choose something that I'd like to do. I'd love to have a season of Kurosawa and fill in and you go, I'd really like to jump into this person's filmography. Maybe watching it one after the other isn't the best way to do it, but maybe pick a filmmaker that you maybe have only seen one of their films and you liked, or you haven't seen any.
I tell you what.
Because you could then do that. You could then have multiple seasons. You could do the winter with one filmmaker. You could do the spring with another, summer with another.
You should choose an actor or director who was born in 1925.
Oh, that's cool.
And work from there, really, and just take like Robert Altman was born there, Sam Peckinpah.
They're most likely no longer with us, but you could look at someone who was big in the 70s and 60s.
Yeah, who delivered some good work. If you want to go that back far, Yanis, that's what I would say, actually. Make it sort of tied to the year.
Yeah.
Thank you, Yanis, for that email. This next one is from Ben, who has a great surname, And it sounds really great. I would love to say it, but Ben, I respect your privacy. Here we go. Hi, George and James. I massively enjoy the show. This is my first time emailing. Don't always agree with you, but nevertheless, I always enjoy the banter. Nice. I recently went to see Anora, and as with you, I thought the film was brilliant. Enjoyed your interview with Sean Baker and Mikey Madison too. However, the experience was somewhat spoiled by two young men who talked throughout the film. It being a mostly loud and raucous film, this did help block out some of the noise, but it was an irritant that never quite went away. I did consider speaking out before, but it was during the powerful final scene, which is a quiet one, that I finally snapped. In a quiet and firm voice, I said, "Can you shut up?" When I got up to leave, one of them flippantly said, "I hope you enjoyed the film." Clearly, they felt no shame or embarrassment. That comment made my blood boil, and I promptly told them to F off. I swiftly exited the cinema, but instantly wondered if my comments had been wise. Although such situations thankfully don't arise very often, I guess my question is, how might you have handled such a situation? Keep up the good work, Ben from Birmingham. Do you know who's going to see? Anora is the kind of film that I'm like, if you're going to see that, surely you're going because you're interested in Sean Baker, you're interested in the top. It's not a mainstream
It's not Transformers
movie.
6. It's,
Yeah.
you've chosen to see it.
To go, let's just go see Anora and just chat the way through.
No, it's so annoying. It's sort of like the Paddington hard stare is the way to go. And if they don't then do it, you can say, "Can you be quiet, please?" It's like the longer you don't do something, the more it's going to annoy you, and you're not focusing on the film at all. It's like burning a hole in the back of your brain.
It's called a hard stare.
We've talked about this a lot. It's different if someone's in front of you versus behind you. If they're behind you, you can turn and make a visual. What's going on here?
If someone's in the row in front of you, I like to think you can lean forward without them knowing and just very quietly by their ear be like, "Could you please be quiet?
Can you be quiet, please? You're being really loud."
Oh, God,
I'll add it. You're being really loud and distracting.
Yeah, you're being really loud. Oh, that's going to embarrass them.
And
It's definitely
hold,
embarrassed.
just tell them like what you're being really loud and
You're being
distracting.
really loud,
And then hold
the stare.
wait,
Ooh.
like stay by their ear.
The hard.
And they go, "Oh, sorry, okay."
Yeah.
Don't even say thank you, cheers. Just be like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Like that's okay for now. You'll be reviewed as the film goes on. But then again,
You give them a hard whisper. A hard, like,
Yeah,
instead of a hard stare, like a hard.
auditorium
But
depending.
like, you get a hard vocal. It's
Sometimes if I can tell the room is annoyed, I'll bring in my voice to sort of be the hero of the room. I could talk about this all day. This next one is for Maggie, who writes in, "Hello, James and George and James. My name is Maggie. Quite a new listener, but damn, am I going through the episodes quickly. You are doing an amazing job, and you have definitely become my favorite film podcast.
Yay!
I enjoy your dynamic a whole lot and appreciate how much it reminds me of the chats I have with my friends after any movie screenings we go to together. That's what we're trying to capture.
Yeah, exactly.
It's wonderful to have this feeling extended to my alone time too, so thank you for that. Additionally, including Polish in your language game, despite how horrible affectionate George's pronunciation was. So she's like,
I really was struggling. It's strange because I can say Polish words, but like I was just my auto file had saved as Italian for weeks before, and I've just overwritten it.
European. It really put a smile on my face. So I'm based in Edinburgh. The cinema here you've mentioned really isn't on the outskirts, lol. But I grew up in Poland, and since coming here, I've grown to embrace that part of my identity. That being said, as a huge movie fan, it's sad for me to see very little representation of Polish and, by extension, Slavic identities in British and American movies. Seeing as we form a significant portion of the immigrant population in both, I really appreciated Anora for portraying Slavic people as more positive mobsters. We could really get rid of that stereotype at this point, though, and I'm really excited to see a real pain when it comes out. Nevertheless, I would really like to see us. I think she means us. I would really like to see us represented more often as anything other than rough and mafia affiliates or housemaids. Yeah, I think I didn't mention that when we saw Anora. It's not usually a favourable representation of Slavic people.
No.
Moving on, I wanted to ask you both about how foreign movies have inspired a curiosity about other cultures in you. I have this ongoing fascination with South Korea because of how much I enjoy their cinema. Parasite, Memories of Murder, and The Handmaiden being my all-time favourite movies. I was wondering if you have a similar relationship with any cultures outside UK. Anyway, I love your podcast and I'm looking forward to all the future episodes and hope making it to one of your future quizzes. Kindly, Maggie. Maggie, thank you so much. I guess with outside of American culture, it's like I've always thought Japanese culture has been really wide. I think not because it hasn't been underexplored, but it's got a really great showing in so many great cinemas. I think it's opened up that culture to Western audiences in a way that I think loads of others haven't had the chance to. I mean, you can see that in pop culture and in video games and in music. and then like what inspires some of the biggest IPs we have. Like you said that about Star Wars, it's very much inspired by like Japanese samurai culture. I really see that culture bleeding into Western identities and intellectual properties.
I would say that I've not explored it, but after seeing Worst Person in the World 2 years ago, the kind of depiction of Norway in that, and I mean in general Scandinavia, so Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, like the films from those countries, I am interested in. There's a kind of art direction with all of them and a design to them I find very interesting. I'd like to explore more.
It's chic and minimalist.
Yeah, it's chic and minimalist, maybe a little bit emotionally cold, but also deep emotional undercurrents as well.
Yeah.
Like I'd something if I had if I had the time to like have a season, perhaps maybe it'd be my year of Scandinavia.
Yeah.
I'd lean into that.
Yeah.
I have individual movies from different parts of the world that I want to see. Yeah. So I want to see No, which is I think it's a Pablo Larraín movie about the Chilean referendum in like the 80s, and it's shot on like awful, crispy video camera stuff.
Nice.
But yeah, to pick a culture out of a hat, I would say probably that. But actually, I would also like to watch more Polish cinema. And when we did our underrated movies, I forgot to mention Paweł Pawlikowski's Cold War, which is a really interesting film. Gorgeously shot in black and white. And it's a bit of a montage film where each scene is only like a few minutes long. And each scene is the camera is fixed. There is no turning like that. So it's kind of formally structured like that. But that's really interesting. And I think because of Polish background, I'd like to lean into that more and have a look at that.
I loved Oslo when I went. And I went in high summer where the sun basically didn't go down. At 2:45 a.m. it was like, hello, morning, which is really quite difficult if you're underslept. But yeah, loved it. Very expensive to be there, but then so is London. But coming from London, I noticed how expensive it was. I was like,
it's a jump.
Well, then this must be expensive, even more expensive than I thought.
The line that really made me laugh in Deadpool, my favourite line actually probably, in Deadpool Wolverine, which was like, we're going to do it Danish style, okay? You know, you'll never see a Danish flag on the moon, but my God, are they happy? Next email.
Also, when I was there, I was like, everything seemed to work really well and was efficient, and people were on. You had like 7-foot Norwegian men on segways riding through. I bet if you're listening, you're like, that's not what it's actually like. But just coming from London, it seemed like a functional society, which was refreshing.
Isn't it Scandinavia? This is a huge generalization and not backed up by any form. So this might be a massively ignorant thing to say, but isn't it like higher taxation to then invest more in public services?
High literacy rates and better education.
Investing things like that. So this next email is from Rufus, who says, hello, James and George and James, and of course, James and George. Nice. I'm a fairly new listener and a first-time emailer.
This is going to get out of hand.
Oh, it's getting way out of hand. I started listening to your podcast a few months ago, and it has reignited my love of cinema to the extent that my last 2 cinema outings have been inspired by the podcast.
We're saving cinema. Let's do it.
Hey! Tom Cruise will be on the phone at any minute to be like, what you guys are doing is incredible.
I have this film coming out. It's called Top Gun 3.
So the films that Rufus went to see were Anora and The Substance.
Nice.
I found Anora particularly excellent, a brilliant example of an original, genre-less, genre-defining movie.
Nice, I like that.
What initially drew me to Pulp Kitchen was your review of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Hey.
I thought George's take on one aspect of the movie was spot on, something I haven't heard from any other reviewers, that the human lead, a character supposedly surviving in a post-apocalyptic, ape-led world, looks like a supermodel with perfect bone structure. Yes, thank you. That still to this day, I'll have moments where I'll go, that just didn't work at all.
Yeah.
It really bothered me that. It's just crazy, Rufus says, especially since the rest of the humans in the film look like wild, hairy cave people. Honestly, every time she's on screen, I'm like, is this like a Pantone, not Pantone, Garnier shampoo advert? Like, it's ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, inspired by this, Rufus says, my first question is, what are some examples of the worst casting decisions in TV and film purely from an aesthetic perspective? Oh. If not, what are some of the worst castings you've seen in general? Just on that question first.
Famous bad ones are Jake Gyllenhaal and Gemma Arterton in the Prince of Persia film from, I want to say, 2008, 2009, 2010. Thank you. Almost got there.
Yeah. Same era,
And Ben Kingsley. They all basically just made their skin a bit darker because, Persia vibes.
And what about Joel Edgerton as Ramesses in Exodus, Gods and Kings?
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff hopefully is now moved on a bit.
Yeah, there's like racial ones, but outside of like other aesthetic things. I guess some people can be a bit too beautiful for a role, which is an annoying thing to have to point out. But it is. You do find that, or like we talked about the age of the House of the Dragon thing.
Oh, that's annoying.
That can be
really
a bit. Where you've taken it just a little bit too far to the point where we have to have a conversation about it, which therefore becomes the interest and not the plot itself.
But mine still remains that Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. It's just a point of distraction. I've never quite had it as so intrusive before. Obviously, it's different when you ask from an aesthetic point of view. It's different when you have actors who just aren't working. Who just aren't up to stuff.
Then the other end of it is that like we don't. You can also see Hollywood leaning towards us being more blind casting, and like the performer should make the role, not necessarily what they look like. But then again, you're not going to cast someone as a hobbit if they don't look like a hobbit, and vice versa for an elf. Just my example there.
Rufus's second question is more of a pet peeve. One thing that annoys me in the film world is trailers that reveal the entire plot and feature a classic song done in a different way. Yeah, absolutely. But conversely, are there any examples of exceptional film trailers in your opinion? Any trailers that actually got you to see the movie you might not have seen otherwise? For me, Cloud Atlas has a disproportionately amazing trailer. We did do an episode episode 19 or something, maybe even earlier, about best movie trailers. I think there's lots of good ones. I will just shout out the ones I always think of that bizarrely stood out as being slightly off the beaten track is the Great Gatsby trailer.
Oh, amazing. That film got delayed by 6 months, and it was like the fever around it was like, but I kept watching the trailer over and over.
And the Watchmen, Zack Snyder's Watchmen, had a really good trailer to a Smashing Pumpkins song. Really, I'd never heard of Watchmen before when I saw that, and I was like, what? It made me think, wow, what is this? What is this world? Those two, I'd say.
Yeah, those I've said before. Force Awakens trailer captures a moment in time. The original 2016 Suicide Squad trailer before they changed it is a really good trailer.
And Rufus just finishes by saying, I'm really enjoying the podcast. Keep up the great work. Why are the podcast fans called the Sirens? Is it a reference to the number of police sirens in your area? Have you thought about calling them the Pulp Heads or the Juicy Bits? I'd love to be a Juicy Bit. All the best, Rufus. Yes, we named you guys Sirens because we're often saying Sirens on our end because James lives in a crime crackhead
For some reason, and I don't know if it's because like I'm not recording, so I don't pay attention to it, but it's like when you are here and we are recording this, I always say it's like Gotham City, like a crime-ridden metropolis is happening outside. I live just off like Haverstock Hill, which is actually like quite a twinkly and like peaceful road. The policemen are just always there, so I constantly have to be like sirens on our end because I'm conscious if people are driving and they're listening to Pulp Kitchen out loud.
So it just became a thing.
It's just always the sirens on our end.
It's like the Truman Show where like. Because of my narrative within your story, they bring the police things like it'd be interesting to know because when we shoot in a different space next year,
which is going to be happening,
there might be no sirens, or maybe I'll bring the sirens again.
Yeah, can you imagine? They just come to us. We just become hyper aware of them. This next one is from Matt, who writes in and says, "Hello lads, how are you? Hope all is well with you both. The Patreon content has definitely been worth the money." Oh, Matt, thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, go and check out the Patreon if you haven't already.
From an objective source there. We really appreciate that.
It's the time of year where me and my partner Amelia have started rewatching Harry Potter. Congrats, guys. This prompted a question. We made it to Chamber of Secrets, and there is a flashback scene set 50 years prior to the events of the film where we see Richard Harris fully robed and with a great big bushy beard. Insert Hot Fuzz impression here. A great bushy beard. You've got...
It's something you haven't got.
You've got a moustache. I know. I think this highlights the inconsistency between the casting of Jude Law as Dumbledore in the latest films. I'm not 100% sure of the timeline, but I just don't see how this Jude Law version of the character should then turn into Harris/Gambon. It's fair to see. How long do you think a beard like that takes to grow?
You don't think he maintained it with a little bit of trimming? I think so. But Dumbledore's beard
if Jude Law has gone from Secrets of Dumbledore little beard, and then he's got a long beard, that takes a long time to grow.
I'd say 10 years.
Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah.
With maintenance.
So after Secrets of Dumbledore, you just had to have been, that's it.
Because you want to brush the beard as well.
Yeah. Dumbledore combing his beard.
Yeah. And do you think also it would have been that thing where Dumbledore would have grown the beard just like down to sternum and it would have looked a bit rubbish. And he would have said, "Guys, well, if you're doing Richard Harris, stick with me. Stick with me. It's going to look great."
What we're forgetting about is magic. Beardus longus instantaneous.
Oh, yeah.
He could just...
Gross Harris.
Gross Harris. Yeah. It's fair to say that I'm not a fan of the casting, and it very much felt to me that the studio thought, let's just put a big actor in there and see what happens. There's no creativity behind this decision. IMO. I kind of agree with you. The casting is not really the issue with that film. It's just the writing and the general direction. I think. I think Jude Law could have done it fine. He definitely did something different to Gambon and Harris, but that's not the issue for me. My question to you: what are some casting decisions that have just not landed to you?
Another casting
same kind of sphere. A few examples that come to mind: Jude Law as Dumbledore, Sophie Turner as Jean Grey in the later X-Men films. It was literally Sansa Stark with an American accent. Yeah, it wasn't filled with the same charisma as. Thank you. Yeah, I was going to struggle to find that name in my brain. And any of the castings for the Joker since Heath Ledger minus Phoenix. Okay, Barry Keoghan and Jared Leto just sound like they're doing a Heath Ledger impersonation.
Well, I said this on Take, didn't I, last week? I said about how I feel like it's really hard. Where do you go from here with the Joker as a performance? We've had, like I said, Heath Ledger is still like the people's favourite, still kind of the OG, but also then Joaquin Phoenix was able to take the character in a way that was really interesting and win an Oscar for it. So if you're an actor coming along now, it's like, oh my God, what else is there to give?
I feel like we've had these. There are a select few characters that exist in Hollywood that have existed in Hollywood for a very long time that we feel like, at least for now, are going to be endlessly rebooted and recast for as long as we can imagine, right? So you've had James Bond as the famous one, who is almost as old as cinema. He gets rebooted, he gets recast, and we very much accept that they're making another one. We don't really groan in the same way that we did when Garfield got announced as Spider-Man or when Tom Holland got announced as Spider-Man, but we've come to accept that this is very likely going to be a mainstay in film. Batman is now there. Are we now going to have Joker? Are we now going to have Iron Man, Guardians, like whoever you want to call it? Are these just perennial, where we don't really question it now? It's, well, who will do it next? So
that's a good point.
It's tricky because I don't know what the Joker thing specifically is going to be defined as in 10 years. When Barry Keoghan hangs up the purple suit and someone else takes it on. I think TBC on what Barry Keoghan does with it, because the Joker thing has sort of happened with impact and fizzled. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
but you know what I mean? There's more of them now.
Yeah.
I feel like there are more of these characters.
It's just
that will endure.
It's like Doctor Who. They'll just be around.
Like Doctor Who, exactly. That's another one.
Okay,
and then Batman, obviously, like you had older ones, but I feel like it's picked up steam in the 21st century if we're just going to get lots of different Batmans now. Yeah.
Last email is from Will, who says, "Are you not ripped? Do we not need to go back to realistic bodies? Hi, George and James and George. Just wanted to say that I'm so grateful to my girlfriend, Sophie, for introducing your podcast to me. As she knows, I love film, and listening or watching to your podcast is one of our favourite things to do.
Sophie, you get a point.
You get a big point. Thank you. Either on a long car journey or just enjoying a quiet evening in front of the TV. If you're watching us right now on the TV,
hello.
I hope you're having a wonderful evening.
your
Really
living room.
cozy. And if you're on a long drive right now, we will of course alert you to any sirens, and I just hope you're having a wonderful drive. Look at that tree.
Yeah. Or if you're just somebody who breaks the law quite a lot and you're wondering, is this the time where the police have finally got me?
Oh, yeah.
The sirens are on our end.
They finally got you, Will. Anyway, however, like your other halves, she is also a lawyer. So watching anything involving any courtroom or criminal proceedings is usually accompanied by a highly critical and vocal commentary about how much is wrong with that scene. Yeah, we experienced the same thing. Luckily, she knows nothing about cars, so at least I can say car chases remain uninterrupted. You win some, you lose some.
It's like the guy wrote in the other day about how the Fast and Furious cars reversed so much faster than they ever would in real life. It's like no car ever needs to reverse that quickly.
The question I have for you is this. Having watched the first Gladiator movie recently, as well as some other action movies from the late 90s and early noughties, I noticed that the heroes were not as ripped or sculpted as they are in today's hero movies. Russell Crowe in the first Gladiator is more of a rugby player build. Keanu Reeves is pretty slim in The Matrix, and the same for Antonio Banderas in The Mask of Zorro, who's more lean than anything else. I feel like this makes them just that a bit more relatable as hero characters, and was wondering with the likes of Austin Butler and Timothée Chalamet taking on more hero-type roles, we might see a more positive body image for men being promoted by Hollywood. Obviously, the subject of what Hollywood has done for body positivity and negativity for women goes far deeper and more troublesome. But I just don't feel that I have the right amount of knowledge and perspective to comment on that. However, it'll be an interesting subject to discuss. Keep up the great work, and good luck with your respective house moves. Sirens on our end.
Thanks. There you go.
Well, thank you very much. I saw this on TikTok recently.
Yeah.
Right? Someone compared the body of Hugh Jackman in Deadpool Wolverine to the body of Hugh Jackman in the first X-Men. And Will's point is absolutely true, that the body of Hugh Jackman in the first X-Men is like conceivably a body of someone who has just worked out a little bit. Just is someone who's toned. But the body of him, obviously in X-Men,
I'd say in Days of Future Past in particular, he looks
ridiculous.
Really, because traditional comic book hero bodies are ridiculous and like an exaggerated expression of muscles.
So on the one hand, they're trying to capture that like superhuman strength, but I agree. I think
I'd say it's
never good.
I'd say to point the finger at film is half the story. I would say it's no coincidence that the films of the last 15, 20 years have also been around when social media and Instagram was birthed and has happened. So I'd say the conversation leads more towards that. But I agree. I think like Chris Hemsworth's body in like some of the Thor films and Avengers projects is nuts. Yeah. But I guess this is just responsibility on the individual, but I would hope that I would understand that he is representing a god, a superhero. I wouldn't aspire to look at my body and think, well, I'm not getting to that same level. I understand I'm not being paid millions of dollars with a year to prep to eat chicken breast and broccoli to get like that.
I think
transparency around steroids and all other stuff is probably also a problem, because I know that that's probably happening as well. I'm not saying Chris Hemsworth is. I'm saying in general, that there is going to be steroid use in Hollywood.
I think what's sad is that it's become much more of like the narrative of how to sell a film. So like with Gladiator II, it's like, oh, look at Paul Mescal's workout routine, and Hugh Jackman will have the same with men's health, men's fitness,
body transformation. So Bale gaining weight, losing weight, Chris Pratt getting buff from Parks and Rec.
Really, because I'm like, what you do as an actor for your role is one thing, but commodifying it and making it as something to sell to people as part of the marketing of the movie is dangerous. And I don't like talking about people's bodies anyway. I feel like it's none of my business. Like I really do. Like if I see people in films, I really don't care how they look, and I don't want to talk about it, especially on this platform, because it makes me feel like I'm complicit in a culture that talks about bodies in a very unhelpful and negative way. The most I'll ever do, I'll definitely never do it about women, but like most I'll ever do is maybe flippantly say a man is very handsome. But like I'm not really interested. I'm conscious of not being complicit in story. Yeah.
I think it's also an Instagram thing. Like we've never been so exposed to strangers' bodies who put them up on the internet. So I think there is that as well. Like, I know magazines have always existed, but you'll see like the Instagram men's health transformation. I quite like it when like a Henry Cavill's on Graham Norton, and Graham Norton will get the picture up of him from Man of Steel or Justice League, whatever. It's like, oh, and you just tell me about the workout routine. And he goes, honestly, it's completely ridiculous, and I had to not drink water for 3 days to look like that. I had a massive headache. I was in a terrible mood. I was training all day, every day. I appreciate when they bring it back down, but they did still do it for the film. So to me, it's a social media thing, not cinema.
You kind of hope that you kind of want the person to look as real. You kind of want them to look as buff as the buffest person in your gym could be. Would you see that person in a locker room in your gym?
Yeah,
it's like I would never ever see someone like Chris Hemsworth.
But it's like a line. It's like, I believe he's strong. I don't need him to be like this towering triangle. There's a particular shot in Thor: Love and Thunder when he gets, when this ridiculous scene when Zeus like strips his clothes off.
Oh yeah,
that's also about that film. Balance. You didn't need to have that moment.
Yeah. Thanks for your email, Will. Really.
And he looks completely insane. He looks the biggest he's ever been, Chris Hemsworth, in that. That was that's sort of inconclusive statement on that, but
we talked about bodies.
Guys, if you wanted to, sorry, were you going to?
No.
Guys, if you wanted to have priority access to have your email read out on the show, you can of course support us on the VIP tier on Patreon, or you can send in your emails to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com, and we will read them out on the show.
On with the game.
Let's do it.
So, James, as ever, Pulp Kitchen ends
with a game.
Well, sort of. Look, I will admit, between scheduling, trying to cobble something together, so I have more of a thought exercise here. I was going to do it as a game, then I realised it's too hard.
But if we have fun, is it not a game?
It's the friends we made along the way, absolutely. So, James, we are approaching, of course, Christmas. And there is a Christmas round for our quiz. Don't forget, you can still buy tickets for the 9th of December. And in thinking about Christmas movies and seasonal things, it got me thinking about calendar events throughout the year and their cinematic representation.
Nice.
James, I'm going to run through a list of calendar events and we're going to think of the way they have been portrayed and featured in cinema.
Okay.
So, James, of course, starting off with an easy one, Christmas.
Christmas films.
Give me a Christmas film.
Love Actually.
There you go. Give
The
me another
Holiday.
one. Thank you. One more.
Jingle All the Way.
Home Alone.
Home Alone.
It's all there. I think it's spoken for.
Yes.
Halloween.
Oh, well, there's Halloween.
Well, there's Halloween franchise, of course.
There's Hocus Pocus.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I would also say, I think there's a trick-or-treating scene in The Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Nice, yeah.
E.T.
Sorry,
E.T.
just E.T., yeah, totally. Yeah, brilliant.
under the
Lovely
costume.
pairing of festival there. The Halloween in particular in Hocus Pocus is so aspirational American. It's really cute. It's like when I close my eyes and someone says Halloween, I think about that and the bullies in the greaser jackets causing trouble and throwing people's pumpkins.
Is it like the kind of Gilmore Girls, New England kind of brown
yeah, oh yeah,
leaves?
it's Salem. It's like
of
literally,
course. Valentine's Day. Of course, we have the movie Valentine's Day, which was, again, a calendar event.
Yeah.
Any other representations of that specific day?
Do we have a Valentine's Day moment in When Harry Met Sally? Or am I making that up? No.
Not specifically. The only one I could think of was Easy A. I'm pretty sure there's a moment where it's to do with Valentine's, and isn't there like a thing with the woodchuck guy?
I've only seen it once a while ago, but yeah, that makes sense. Valentine's Day in film. That is a good one. There's probably loads.
Is there Valentine's Day in Mean Girls?
I don't think so.
Halloween in Mean Girls, of course.
Yeah. You know what's a really, just diverting slightly, like what's really prominent in American high school things is like the under the sea dance, the prom.
The prom.
Those like seasonal things. Those are really big. Homecoming, yeah. Still don't know what that is.
I think it's the beginning of the term, isn't it?
Yeah.
And but it's not at the beginning
away.
of the term. It's whatever.
I don't know.
So not
Americans
many
are like
for
banging their
Valentine's
heads.
Day.
Yeah, not many.
Easter. I mean, if you're doing it very literally, the Passion of the Christ.
Book of Clarence.
Do you remember that
film?
My God, yeah.
That came out.
And
just to nothing.
Sadly, The Book of Clarence which is a film we reviewed like 6 months ago, is a film I use in my head as an example of how films just disappear and evaporate.
Completely.
That film was made for like $40 million. Those people went to that country and they filmed
those
it on
actors.
location. They learnt those lines.
As far as I'm aware,
They shot it.
we went to like a bunker at Sony to go and see that. And I just feel like that happened in a vacuum and the film never left that bunker. And I never heard from it again. I never saw a trailer for it. It just was there. And we saw it.
Well, wasn't a cheap looking film either.
It was on location in it looked legit.
I think it's from Malta maybe or
something like
Croatia.
that. Yeah. Anyway.
Mad. But then you have like obviously the sadly tainted now, but Hop, that Russell Brand rabbit movie.
Oh, okay.
You know,
I've
Hop
not seen it.
Easter egg.
I
I think when I looked online, people said Peter Rabbit is an Easter film. I don't know if that's just because it has a rabbit in it.
Bunny, yeah.
Easter
I
also
think we could do a horror film with like a demented Easter bunny. That could be fun.
Oh, surely that's been done.
gotta be
Like
done.
the Bunny in the Holy Grail.
Yeah, but like a savage bunny, yeah.
Actually, Jason, there is a movie for Good Friday, which is The Long Good Friday.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah. Really good film.
Really great British crime thriller from the 70s.
We had that wheeled in on a TV at school at the end of term.
What? It's quite violent.
Yeah.
It's
Pretty
got
cool.
Bob Hoskins. Terrific.
Fantastic. And a brilliant score.
Yeah. And do you know who's in that movie that a lot of people forget?
Can't remember.
Well, Helen Mirren, for one. She plays his wife, very young Helen Mirren. But Pierce Brosnan has no lines in it. He plays one of the Irish henchmen.
Oh, nice.
No line. He's very young and he sort of turns around.
I think I watched that in 2009.
It's a good movie. Good movie.
Yeah.
I'd actually like to watch that again. It's not me. It's that mean British thriller. Like people get. There's blood and it's like Get Carter as well. You didn't Get Carter?
No.
Michael Caine. That's a good movie. Good movie. Nice. New Year's Eve. Again, we had the movie New Year's Eve, which was the other kind of lots of people in the city on one night, and also featuring Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Any other ones, James?
I'm really thinking of a moment in the OC season 1 when Ryan has to get back to Marissa for New Year's Eve because the crazy guy Oliver is there and he's going to try and kiss her, but he makes it in time. There's a really great needle drop. For a song I can't remember the name of, but I'm thinking of. But oh my God, there must be loads. New Year's Eve.
There's the ending of When Harry Met Sally.
Yes,
which takes place on New Year's Eve, which I will say a great ending. Fantastic. A whole movie, no problem. No
do you know why that keeps coming up is because it's so
autumnal.
Yeah. What is it about that? It just feels like
What about that movie?
festive.
I think it's because it's autumnal and
Yeah.
it's sort of it's the fashion and
I wanna
everything.
rewatch it.
But I will say that no notes on When Harry Met Sally, but the ending of that I think borrows from one of my favorite films, The Apartment, which it's basically the same ending.
Yeah.
A run across town on New Year's Eve
Yeah.
to tell someone you love them. I would say that, but also Godfather Part 2, the very famous scene where Al Pacino Michael grabs Fredo's face, kisses him on the lips and says, "I knew it was you, Fredo. I knew it was you. You broke my heart."
Yeah.
Happens in New Year's Eve in Cuba in 1952.
Yeah.
Great. There's also a great sketch or bit in New Girl where Schmidt keeps Fredo kissing Nick. And he's like,
Yeah.
"What? The Fredo kiss? Come on." Winston. The Summer Solstice, easy one.
Oh, it was Midsummer straight away.
The only one. Funnily enough, the Summer Solstice canon is not that big.
They ruined it. You contrast the beautiful, bright, saturated colours with the most horrible. God, I actually forget a lot about the last 30 minutes of that film.
Yes.
I've blocked it out.
It's nuts.
I don't want to rewatch it, but I kind of do. I have my one experience of it, and I'm done.
It was a bit frustrating.
You haven't seen Beau is Afraid.
Oh, no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to.
Yes.
Passover.
I mean, Prince of Egypt
Prince
is
of
the
Egypt,
go.
there you go.
So the Prince of Egypt is the Passover of Egypt. The Prince of Egypt is so good.
Do not pass over the Prince of Egypt.
It's
'cause
one of my
great.
favorite musicals. It feels like a level above the other animated Disney musicals. It just seems to tell the story with just more oomph. It's fantastic.
Is it still on stage?
Yeah, on and
Somewhere.
off. I don't know if it's consistently on, but within a year it's been
I remember
on.
really liking the movie when I was younger. I'd
Yeah.
love to rewatch that.
It's fantastic. Great cast. Adrian Brody, Val Kilmer,
Yeah, that's
Michelle
right.
Pfeiffer,
Yeah.
others.
And lastly, James, Thanksgiving.
Steve Martin, sorry.
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. Oh, it's kind of all blurred into an amorphous blob. TV is really big for Thanksgiving.
I actually think that some of the best Friends episodes are the Thanksgiving ones
they're
because
really
it's
good.
tight, contained. It's like a play.
I'm wearing jeans. They got no give. I'll be back.
Oh yeah. All right. I was going to say Planes, Trains and Automobiles. If you haven't seen it, so it's still so funny.
Yeah.
Steve Martin, John Candy. It's set at Thanksgiving, but because of the kind of holiday vibe, you could watch it at Christmas. It's got this great opening scene where it's like true cinema, completely dialogue free, and it's like all great comedy, completely physical and visual, where it's the New York City street. It's so busy. Everyone's trying to get a cab to get home for Thanksgiving. Steve Martin's out in the street, all the cabs are going, and he sees a cab down the street that's got its light on. But he looks across the street, and a very young Kevin Bacon is another office worker who's come out and sees the same cab, and they look at it, and they are running parallel down the street, trying to get to the cab in time. It's really brilliant. I love that.
just thought of a moment in Spider-Man 1 when they go to the Osborns' apartment for Thanksgiving, or Harry Swanky New York apartment for Thanksgiving. And Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin is all hopped up on goblin juice, so he's very erratic and violent. And he goes to stick his fingers in the blueberry pie before it's ready, and Aunt May slaps his hand, and it's like not until we say grace, and gives this look in his eyes like he's gonna fucking kill Aunt May. And then he starts sharpening the turkey knives, and he's just had a fight with Spider-Man, right, where he slices him up with a goblin thing, and then he notices Peter Parker's got this slice in his arm, and he's like, "What happened to your arm?" And he's like, and Tobey Maguire's like, "A bike messenger clipped me," and he's realizing that Tobey Maguire is Spider-Man, Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and he's slicing the turkey. Loved it.
Well, those were some of the seasonal calendar events that we ran through that were represented in cinema. Like I say, not a game, but a light-hearted exercise for us to finish this episode of Pulp Kitchen. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed going to see Gladiator II.
I assume all of you are going to go and see it.
I assume so. Send your emails in. We will read it out on the show, obviously. We are recording this very much out of time. As we said, we were ahead of the schedule, so there is going to be a slight disruption to the release schedule.
You'll get
for
content,
episode.
though.
You'll get content, but just bear with us while we're away. We're taking a little bit of much-earned break, and we'll be back, as ever, in the coming weeks. But, James, should we end the show with anything else to say?
Guys, thank you so much for listening to Pulp Kitchen. Don't forget, we post new episodes of this podcast every single Wednesday.
And you can support us as ever if you would like to on Patreon, where you get an exclusive new show specific for that platform, Double Take. This week we talked about Mission Impossibles.
Yes.
All the Mission Impossibles and the trailer that came out for Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. We talked about Gladiator, the first film, our thoughts about that. And we talked about
the crazy year that is
release
2026.
calendar. Yeah.
If you don't know about 2026, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like Thanos. It's on its way,
Yeah.
and we need to deal with it. It's absolutely
I
massive.
like to think that it's like in Interstellar, where you're looking at the wave going away in the distance, and that's the year 2024 that's gone. And then you turn around and you see 2026, you're like, oh my God!
It really is like that. It's going to be a huge year. Avengers, Spider-Man. Basically, we covered it all and how it's looking to be a really big one. All the more reason to stay tuned to Pulp Kitchen for all the fun. Thank you as always to our producers, Aidan, Finn and Dave. We really, really appreciate your support. And for anyone who supports us and just listens to the show, we really do appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a great week.
Have a great week.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.